This is a little video from Hotspot from David Hundian, which, it's kind of funny. I did a show with Nico. Nico's going to be on your show today. I did a show with him earlier today for WBAI with Fiorella. It was like the old school convo couch with the professor Jeremy Kozmarov and Gloria Guillo. And he had mentioned David doing some work with him in Hotspot, whatnot. And David's got millions of followers. And he really just hits it on the nose. Now, I'm not crazy about the fact he used Hassan Piker, but I brought this video to you purposely because it does have Hassan Piker, and I'll get into my theories about what's going on then, what happened then after J6, because this is a parallel, right? What happened then with J6 and what's going on now, the political football that's taking place, the pre-crime that is here. But this video gives you a really good breakdown, Matt. I think I'll explain everything, and then we'll get into it a little bit more as we go along.
Okay, let's check it out.
In national headlines, President Trump signed an executive order Thursday targeting domestic terrorism networks and organized political violence. Trump saying the order will work to tackle, quote, anarchists from the left and the groups funding them.
That doesn't sound like much, does it? Just the president signing an executive order to fight against a local problem. Or is it? Because when you take even a cursory look at National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, or NSPM-7 as they're calling it in Washington, a lot of things with a lot of far-reaching implications start to jump off the page at you. The first is that this is possibly the biggest internal power grab we have witnessed by a US president in our lifetime. Typically, when the empire's presidents wish to wield unconstitutional power, they couch it in layers of bureaucracy and legalese that would give you a headache trying to figure it out. Not Trump. With a stroke of his pen, he has not only effectively declared war on any domestic institutions, organizations, or individuals that fundamentally oppose his agenda, but he has also effectively criminalized them through the back door by creating incredibly vague definitions for what a terrorist is now. Domestic terrorism, according to NSPM-7, now includes expressing support for ideas like anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-Christianity, support for the overthrow of the United States government, extremism on migration, extremism on race, extremism on gender, hostility toward those who hold traditional American views on family, hostility to those who hold traditional American views on religion, and hostility to those who hold traditional American views on morality. Do you see the problem here? Does being a vocal trade unionist, for example, qualify someone as an anti-capitalist, which would then make them a terrorist under the wording of this executive order? And what are the thresholds for any of these things that would make them constitute domestic terrorism? Apparently nobody knows.
There isn't a lot of appetite for this kind of thing. There isn't a lot of appetite for this kind of like mass apprehension, right? But the goal is to manufacture some kind of consent for the federal government to start apprehending and arresting anyone and everyone that has remotely demonstrated empathy at any point. This tactic sounds familiar if you are aware of how America's allies have worked, or puppet states, dictatorships, fascist forms of governance all around the world that we've aligned with. We have done this everywhere else. It's called the Jakarta method for a reason. It was first implemented in Jakarta. Now we are turning that same scrutiny and same principled authoritarian fascist technique to the domestic front. Fascism is colonialism turned inward, and this is fascism.
NSPM-7 is actually a full frontal attack on the US First Amendment, and it's an important sign that we are at this stage of imperial collapse, where the empire has lost the ability to pretend to uphold certain ideals and is now retreating full speed into regular old fascism. We're long past imperial boomerang now. We're at the part of the story where the empire is building large detention camps and preparing to turn itself into the exact fascist police state that it has spent decades creating in other people's countries. It's now deploying surveillance equipment recently tested on Palestinians on its own streets. And most interestingly of all, the open-ended wording of these newfangled terrorism offenses makes it such that predictive policing has effectively become a reality. So now if you live in the imperial core, you're about to witness Minority Report happen in real life. No First Amendment, no checks and balances, just an angry, naked emperor pushing every button available to him. Welcome to the reality that the rest of us have always lived in.
So what do you think from that, Matt? I mean,
Man.
do you have any initial questions or thought? I mean, he really laid it out. I thought this was one of the better videos. The only thing I'm critical about is Hassan Piker because of the language Hassan Piker used on January 6th, when Joe Biden, I don't know if you remember, but it was called the National Strategy for Countering Domestic Terrorism. That's the first time when they started defining domestic terrorism, right? Who was a domestic terrorist? And, me and Fiorella jumped up. We screamed about this. This is bad. If they start calling their own citizen terrorist, then the security state will have carte blanche to do what they always want to do, just like they're doing overseas. The many times I've said to you before, and I've said on my show, it only starts, with the immigrant, right? It doesn't end there. With how they take away their rights, they'll take away our rights. How they jail them without due process, they'll jail us without due process. What they do overseas, eventually the chickens will come home to roost. So I just want to know what you think what your initial thoughts are on this. And then there's a couple questions I'd like to kind of ask you to get your opinions and kind of talk through this, because this is something that's not got much coverage. I was on Union of the Unwanted on the night. I thought Union of the Unwanted on Monday, and I thought for sure these people would be into it. Nobody on the panel of 12 people even knew what the fuck I was talking about. I'm like, okay. You don't hear anybody on the right talking about this the way they were talking about it when the strategy for labeling domestic terrorism was out there by Biden after January 6th, right? You heard a bunch of right-wingers going crazy. Where's Candace Owens on this? Where's Nick Fuentes on this? Where's Dave Smith on this? Where are all these people out there that are talking about all this jargon and stuff and not pointing out that pre-crime is here? Because the key word in this memorandum is disrupt. They want he's telling people, agencies, the IRS, the CIA, and I said yes, the IRS, because they're going to go after the financial ties. The CIA, this is when he said minority point, he said disrupt. That means it's currently happening and it hasn't happened yet, or it's about to happen. This is pre-crime. It's here, ladies and gentlemen. Your thoughts, Matt? Sorry.
No, this is absolutely an important discussion here. And the reason that you're not hearing about it from people that maybe are calling out other things, right? We know we know the people you mentioned are calling out Israel about Trump, but they're not. They certainly don't have their mind in the right spot with what is actually happening, which you hit it on the head. And it's about the language, right? So it's about what we define as terrorism. And so I think for us, where we're coming from, homeless left or whatever you want to call us, we saw that, and I'm glad you brought the J6 thing, because we saw that right away in the beginning of Trump's term. That you would think that if people that were yelling and screaming about this when Biden was doing it, you'd think that they would apply that principle. Well, they didn't. They did the opposite. They said, let's ship all these criminals to El Salvador. Let's go teach those Tesla protesters a lesson. And he started using this language, right? So of course they're not seeing that right now. And it's I don't know if it's shocking, but it's disturbing, and it's saddening that so few people are seeing this, because this is a blueprint. Of course they're using it against us. Of course they can define the language how they want to define it when it's convenient for them. I don't know why we can't understand that. Yes, we can yell and scream about Israel and align with these people about that. Absolutely. But if they don't understand the fundamentals of the way our system is functioning and that we can just do this, it's not unique that Trump is doing this. This is what I'm seeing from this. It's happening now. No one's talking about it, but you mentioned Biden. This is how every administration functions. And I think just people are on both sides are just used to it. We grew up with this, man. We grew up with this, war on terror, and you're either with us or against us. And we're going to come after you if you give us a reason. But hey, if you got nothing to hide, what are you so afraid of? What are you so afraid of? You got nothing to hide. You ain't doing anything wrong. Not unless we say you're doing something wrong. So we know all this stuff. And yes, more people. It should not be this should not be a partisan issue. This should be a people's issue. That's my initial thoughts on it. Are we kind of on the same wavelength here, you think?
Yeah. There's some things I'd like to highlight,
Sure.
being that. All right. So I mentioned Hassan Piker, Hassan Piker and Ken Klippenstein, Ron Ukalik with Eugene. I forgot the name, Breaking Points, I think it's called. I'm not sure that one. They did a video on it. You know what I'm saying? It's just weird because now I don't want to say I can't really pinpoint the fact that Rania and Eugene they were really upset about this coming out, and they were pointing this out, how they're going after leftists, right? They didn't really say anything about the other stuff. They were silent when Joe Biden did it. But same thing with Ken and Hassan. They didn't go forth and rubber stamp and say, yes, they should do this. They should label people as domestic terrorists. But they use language which would certainly justify this, saying this is uncalled for political violence. This is really bad. They manufactured consent, definitely, with their definitions. Yep. And you can go back and look for it yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. You can tell me if I'm wrong. Once again, they didn't cross the line completely and say, yes, this is good. But they used the language definitely that they were used in the mainstream media and the politicians were using to label people, political violence, domestic terrorist, they wanted to take over the government and stuff, and that's just not true. A bunch of Second Amendment nut jobs didn't bring their guns that day. I didn't see one single weapon. But it's important to say, okay, well, this time Donald Trump is in office. Look who he labeled as a domestic terrorist, right? Anti-Christian, anti-capitalist, right? If you go back and you look at the national strategy for countering domestic terrorism under Joe Biden, it was animal rights or environmental violent extremists. Like if you didn't believe in climate change the way the Democrats did, you were a domestic terrorist. If you didn't believe, if you believed in animal rights, right, they went after you too. Vegans, they even said. Abortion-related violent extremists. If you are anti-abortion, then you are a violent extremist, right? Then you are a domestic terrorist. And they did, and now on this side, they just did the opposite. So it's important, Matt, that we stay consistent on the First Amendment, that we stay, I'm saying? It's your right to be anti-capitalist. It's your right to be anti-Christian. It's your right to be anti-American, if that's what you consider. If you don't, I'm saying? You're not allowed to direct people to hurt people. You're not allowed to spread violence. You're not allowed to direct violence or call for violence. You know what I'm saying? But you're allowed to oppose these things. All this speech that they are going after, and they're playing political football. Biden went out there and he designated who is a domestic terrorist. Yep. Donald Trump did the same thing, but now he's directing all the three later agencies, which are all unconstitutional, by the way. All their powers are not in the Constitution. Every single one of them. FBI, CIA, Department of Homeland Security, DHS, you know what I'm saying? State Department, IRS. I mean, so not only is he labeling the people, his enemies on the left, and you saw all those people, right? You know what I'm saying? He was labeling. He's directing these agencies what to do. Disrupt means pre-crime. That's why he talked about Minority Report.
Oh, yeah.
This is really, really bad, Matt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, like the pre-crime part it makes it even, it's like, because we're talking about Black Mirror. We're talking about a dystopian future we've arrived at, where it's not even our actions that they can justify the labeling of terrorism. They can talk about our future actions because our algorithm came up a certain way, and there's nothing we can do about it. There's no recourse. And everybody signed on for this right now. So everybody on the Biden camp has signed on for it. Now everybody on the Trump side has signed on for it. Who's left? We're right here. The small group of us that have been yelling about it the whole time and are consistent. It's too bad more people can't apply those same principles. Doesn't matter who's in office. They're doing it to all of us.
Now, if you can just, the next article I have.
Okay, let me bring that up. Okay.
Yeah, just go to section 2 real quick. That's all I want to do is I just want to read the beginning of this. And I mean, this should be frightening. And anybody who supported Donald Trump, I mean, this isn't the nail in the coffin. This is the M80 thrown in the little hole of the coffin to blow you up while you're in there and you can't escape. Now, make that as big as you can. I'm just going to read the first couple lines.
Oh, man.
It says, investigating domestic terrorist organization. The memorandum appoints the National Joint Terrorism Task Force, which I think was created under Biden once again, and its local offices to coordinate and supervise a comprehensive national strategy. Look how it's using the same language as that bill that Biden wrote, right? To carry out the memorandum's goals. It directs the JTTF, which is the Joint Terrorism Task Force, to investigate, here we go, potential federal crimes relating to the acts of recruiting and radicalizing persons to engage in political violence, terrorism, or conspiracy of violent deprivation of any citizen's rights.
Wow.
I mean, that's all I got to say. That's all I brought to the table, ladies and gentlemen, because I want you to go look at it yourself. This is more of the same. I read this article. I went through it. I looked at the bill. I perused it. I mean, it's there, guys. It's pre-crime is now officially here. The fourth industrial revolution, the Great Reset is in stride. You should say completely and clearly out loud that you do regret supporting him and telling people to vote for him. This is scary. We have to understand that there's no such thing versus Democrat versus Republican. They're working together, handing off the baton, continuing what the last presidency started. It was Democrats and it was Joe Biden. He had the national strategy and he labeled people. He labeled citizens as domestic terrorists, and so many leftists were okay with it because they thought they were fighting misogyny and racism and fascism and bigotry. You know what I'm saying? And xenophobia. It's okay to break and twist the law. It's okay to ignore the Constitution. It's okay to infringe on other people's civil liberties who don't have your beliefs, as long as you're doing it for good. This is how we get in trouble when we are not principled. And you use that word a lot, Matt. That's the word of the year for the homeless left. It's principled. When we are not principled on the First Amendment and the Fourth Amendment across the board, it will come back and bite us in the ass. Now they're watching everything the left is doing. So really, I don't want to hear so much from Hassan Piker or Ken Klippenstein or anybody else who didn't speak up the way we did when Biden pushed his national strategy, labeling Americans as domestic terrorists. Chickens are coming home to roost, guys. You see what they're doing to the terrorists in the Caribbean? Well, they can do it to you. We had to snipe him because he was going to commit a crime.
Yep.
That is those fucking bonkers.
Those fishermen were about to really unload some drugs there. So we had to get them.
And how many people are going along with that, Matt?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Nobody's speaking up about it.
No one's speaking up about it. But I'll listen to those guys if they can have a little reflection moment and say, you know what? I got that Biden stuff wrong. I apologize. We talk about the apology. That would change things, right? A little bit, maybe, but that's not going to happen. Let's not hold our breath on that.